Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you the access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember to use your promo code Bleav to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Again, that's BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. It is the Arizona Cardinals centric specific show where, of course, we talk about the Arizona Cardinals here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. I am one of your co-hosts. I am Javon J. Love Adams. And typically with me is the one and only man who played professional baseball, but also played in the National Football League on that first Super Bowl bound team for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm talking about none other than Ed Easy Smith. But man, he's on assignment right now. He actually attended. He'll be there for the next episode. He'll be in present and accounted for. But he's on doing some business stuff right now, So I can't be mad at that. And he'll give a recounting of what he's up to. But we do this thing 2 times a week, so that's why I'm doing it solo, because I'm just trying to make sure to stay in touch with what's going on here, stay on schedule, stay on task, stay ahead of the chains. So we do it Mondays and Thursdays. So Mondays we look back on the week that was, or the game that was, and then on Thursdays we look ahead to the upcoming opponent, and so that's how that goes. So man, today got a lot to talk about. Of course, recapping the game against the New York Giants. Here the New York Giants came and really took over State Farm Stadium, so want to talk about that. Of course, the epic meltdown, how Joshua Dobbs, he impressed me a little bit more than this week, and maybe it was because of the play calling, and we'll get to that. The home advantage or disadvantage for the Arizona Cardinals competing. Had a couple of folks that had reached out to me and said, this team could be good. Hopefully they'll win next time. And so we'll get to that. And I still don't think that's the case. I think it's a different word to be able to use to describe what we've seen early on from this team. And then who's to blame for this 31-28 loss? So let's get to it. So I was actually in attendance at the game. My wife, our youngest, who's 17, and we went to the game. We were sitting way up in the 400 section, but that's all right. I'm not mad at that. It's actually the way we were. If you're looking, the one end zone had Arizona, the other had Cardinals, right? So in terms of what's the wording in the end zone, so we were at the Cardinals edge of it. Actually, if you're at that S diagonal up from there, it was a good, really good. It's almost like having the all 22. To be able to look at, because you could see those plays as they would develop, and that was the positive after having to hike up all those stairs and to get all the way up at the top there. But 31-28, it started out great. One of the things that at the end of the first half, it was 20-0 the Cardinals, and it seemed as if this was, the Giant fans, because there were a sea of Giant fans that came and took over State Farm Stadium. My brother-in-law, one of those. A lot of people who live here in the Valley who are from the East Coast, and then I'm sure that there were some that decided to make it a point to, let's go on out, let's enjoy the warm weather, and let's watch the Giants beat up on the Arizona Cardinals. And so I'm sure that was part of it as well, or maybe flying in from all kinds of different points. But either way, there was a big contingent of New York Giant fans that were in the building. But 20-0 at the end of the first half. And then, of course, the second half began, and I was out there getting with my son. We were in the concession line, so trying to grab a quick bite and a refill for soda. And so when we were standing there, just as the second half starts up, what was it? If you look at the scoring recap, Daniel Jones, 14-yard run that made it 20-7, and it happened so quickly. I was at 13:43 left in the third quarter, and so right away there was somebody that was sitting behind us and said, when we got back up to our seats, watch the Cardinals lose this. And that was, I'm thinking, no, they can hold on, but of course, as you go on, the defense didn't really show anything in the second half. And I think that and I'll get into that a little bit well, I guess I can get into it now. One of the things that it seemed to me, and maybe Ed, when he looks at if he was able to watch the game where he's at, my son and I, we were talking about this. It seemed like the Suns, I got basketball in the mind. It seems as if the Cardinals were playing a little bit of zone. And so they looked to be a little bit more aggressive in the first half. Again, I think it's human nature when you're up on an opponent to maybe relax a little bit, but I still don't think that 20-0 was enough to relax. If it was 30-0, I could understand maybe taking your foot off the gas a little bit. But as the Giants began to kind of chip away, Daniel Jones was a lot more mobile, much more mobile in the second half than he was in the first half. But so that soft part of the defense, that right in that underneath, right in that soft part where a zone would be, they started to really take advantage of that. And I don't think that the Cardinals, it didn't seem like maybe Nick Rallis adjusted or made the adjustments to be able to look at to trying to stem the tide. Because yes, 20-7 is not something that you need to be worried about. But then because the Cardinals did come back down and they made it at one point, it was 21. Let me see. At one point, it was 28-7. But still, when the Cardinals gave up another touchdown and made it 28-14 towards the end of the third quarter, then it really became a game, because now it's not just a matter of you trying to continue to add to your lead. Then you start to play not to lose as opposed to playing to win, in my opinion. That's the way that I kind of saw it. And you could hear in the building the quiet New York Giants fans in the third quarter. Just all it took was that first touchdown. They needed something to cheer for, and especially starting off the third quarter in that way. Again, there was 13 minutes and some change left in the third quarter when they got their first touchdown. That kind of gave them a little bit of a sense of confidence, the fan base, a sense of hope. There is a better way to say it, a sense of hope. And if you look at this, the way in which, if I look at the way in which Joshua Dobbs performed, because I was impressed with not only the fact that he was mobile. So if I look at the team stats here, I'll look at the box score for him. So if we look at Joshua Dobbs, well, let's take a look at Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, 26-37, 321 yards, 8.7 yards yard average. And then just running as well, nine rushing attempts for 59 yards. And those things, sometimes it wasn't the fact that he was breaking it for 20 or 30-yard runs, but if you saw that in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, the early part of the fourth quarter, when the Cardinals seemed to have had him bottled up, and then it was somebody diving at his feet and not being able to bring him down, and him getting the high knees, getting up a little bit and being able to get a few yards to again, as I mentioned, kind of in playfully a little earlier, but staying ahead of the chains. And by staying ahead of the chains gives you an opportunity to be able to dictate what you're going to do to the defense. And as that confidence began to build, and you can really see that with the New York Giants. So let's get back to Joshua Dobbs, because it kind of goes into what I'm going to be saying about kind of the play calling. We talked about this last week. Ed and I talked about this last week when they were playing the Commanders. The Commanders, it seemed as if that maybe Drew Petzing was a little bit conservative in his play calling, and perhaps that came from up top from Jonathan Gannon being able to say, let's just try to really stay within ourselves and not do too much. Again, with Joshua Dobbs being still a couple of weeks, just a week and a half or so being on the team. But this week it seemed to be a little bit different. The numbers don't blow you away, but from what I could see and the way in which he was looking a little bit further downfield, it was a bit of a difference. So with Joshua Dobbs, he was 21 for 31, 228 yards, 7.4 average. He had a touchdown, 99. His QBR was 75.8, but he had three carries for 41 yards. I thought the carries, and I don't know if it comes into the final stats, when they went for it on two, at the time I was thinking, I don't think that they should have gone for it because they had missed because they had gone for field goals. And I think that I saw what they were trying to do when they went for two, and then they rushed Joshua Dobbs, and he got hit, he got nicked up a little bit, and you don't want that to happen to your quarterback. I don't care if it's just a quarterback that's keeping the seat warm until Kyler Murray comes back, but you still want to make sure that he's able to perform at his best. But having said that, the way in which that first half went, again, you put 20 points up on the board, then you feel comfortable and you feel that you're doing something right. You get what James Conner got a touchdown. Of course, Joshua Dobbs, he got his touchdown in the third quarter, I Bleav. But here's the thing: it just seemed that maybe he was a little bit more confident, and maybe that's being in the offense for an additional week. Or maybe it was the play calling, being a little bit more aggressive. And I'm not, if aggressive is on, if there are two sides, or if there's a scale of aggression, 0 meaning I'm not aggressive, I'm very super conservative, or 1 being super conservative and 10 being I am just pushing it down the field the entire time, I would say they were probably around a 5 or a 6, right? So they weren't trying to push the ball down the field, but you could see it just felt a little bit different. And being able, that eye test, I felt as if they were calling a better game until there were 2 opportunities that the Cardinals had to try to put 7 on the board. And that was, if we go to the scoring, bear with me just a second. So if we go to the 2 field goals. So the Cardinals, it was right after the punt from the New York Giants. The Cardinals had went on a 9-play drive for 54 yards, took up 5 minutes and 2 seconds on the clock, but they ended with 3. Then they also had, after an interception, wonderful interception. Again, the crowd is really into it. And they went on a 6-play drive, only got 8 yards, took up 3 minutes and 11 seconds off the clock, and then they got another field goal. Those 2 opportunities, I think, were lost opportunities because I think that they were playing for the field goal based upon the field position, based upon where the punt and how far the drive ended up going. And so you get to a certain point and you start to, instead of calling plays, again, if it's that range of aggression, that 5 to 6 aggression that you might have been calling them with, now you're starting to pull it back to about a 2. And you could kind of feel that. And I said that, a couple other people that were sitting around me said that as well in the stadium, but it just felt different. It felt as if we're going to settle for these threes instead of taking advantage of, especially that interception. And those are opportunities where I felt that's really where it came back to bite. We know we had the missed field goal in the beginning of the game. I Bleav it was right at the top. We missed a field goal, about a 55-yard missed attempt. Yes, that would have been great to have, but 55 yards is not always automatic. Yes, it's inside and it's a controlled environment. Still, I think those two field goal attempts, that's what ended up being the difference. And then when I talk about Joshua Dobbs' performance, I'm also talking about in terms of where that play calling went. The second half, I felt that it's almost the analogy of a boxer. You're in the ring and you're winning, you're up on points, you're doing all the things that you need to do, you're jabbing, you're getting to the body, you're controlling the pace, you're having the controlled aggression, you are the aggressor. And then all of a sudden you get hit on the side of the head, and in the 7th or 8th round, and you've been winning all 6 rounds previous to that, and now you're stunned, and you start to cover up a little bit, and so you're not being as aggressive, and you're starting to backpedal. And I think that's what started to happen, especially when the score became 28-14, based upon the play calling. The play calling seemed to be a little bit more conservative. James Conner finished with 106 yards, so that's great for him. They were physical. They were physical in that way, especially when he was getting off on the edges, around outside of the tackles. You could see that in some of the lanes that were opening up, and that was because of that aggression on that 5 to 6 level type of aggression. But the play calls in the second half, and not adjusting on the defensive side of the ball, I think, are what led to this, because confidence is a big thing. If we're going out there, if what was working is no longer working, but we continue to do it because that's what we're going to do, that is the definition of insanity, because it's not working anymore. You want to adjust, and making those adjustments as a coach, because the New York Giants made adjustments, tiny little adjustments. You started to see, again, you saw Daniel Jones become much more active in terms of running. And then once those running lanes and being able to, you saw I mean, Saquon Barkley, what can you say? I mean, he might be, I think his ankle was injured at some point in the game, but just his presence and being able to continue to tote the rock. Yes, you want to be able to keep the illusion or to keep the defense on their toes about whether or not you're going to run the ball or not. But they began to just pass the ball, and they took advantage of the secondary over the top because adjustments were not made. Now, that's my point of view. It could be that players were in the wrong place and not doing what they need to do. Oftentimes we blame the players. In this case, especially for the first couple of weeks, to me, it seems that maybe it's some things, the growing pains of being a coach in a position that it's not just important to have the game plan that you've created during the week, but to adjust it and to be able to stay with it. Now, when you're in the fourth quarter and you're up 30, sure, then maybe we can adjust a little bit, maybe take some more time off the clock, do some things along those lines. But I think that in my opinion, that the coaching staff did a disservice, and even Jonathan Gannon said as much in the post game comments where he said this loss, he said he was out coached, and I think he's right. He's right. And that doesn't have to define who he is when it comes to who he is as a head coach. This is his second game in this role, but you got to figure it out pretty quick before you lose that locker room. You don't want to lose the locker room. You don't want to lose the faith of the general manager either, even though you're signed to this contract. But these are things that you need to shore up, because it's not good enough. It's good enough this week, and maybe it'll be good enough one or two other times where you can hold your hand up and say, I was out coached. But it begins to fall on deaf ears if you continue to say you got out coached. What are we doing to adjust, to fix that issue? The same way that you would say to a player, if you're getting beat on this, or if you're not going deep enough in your route, whatever that is that you're trying to coach that player up, and they continue to make those mistakes, but they continue to hold themselves accountable and say, yes, coach, I made the mistake. Eventually you'll say, yes, you're accountable, but you can't be accountable on this team anymore. You got to be somewhere else. So these are things to make sure that you're tightening those screws when it comes to that. When it came to penalties, much better job on penalties this game, but this is a lost opportunity. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. So I mentioned that it was a sea of the whatever the colors are, the Giants blue, or whatever you want to call it. So the opposition, there were so many of the opposition for those New York Giants fans that were in the building. It's really unfortunate, because there were a few years there where there was actually a home field advantage for the Arizona Cardinals on those off times where we would go to the games and just see the sea of red. And yes, you would see the other team's colors in the building as well, but not to the extent that I've seen just yet. I know it was a preseason game, but we went to the preseason game and they were playing the Denver Broncos, the amount of Denver Bronco fans that were in the building, and then also with the New York Giants. And next week you have the Dallas Cowboys that are coming in, and that's going to be a wrap. I don't expect this is people trying to sell their tickets to be able to maybe pay 3 or 4 months of their home mortgage. So that I can't knock them for that. But having said that, there is no home field advantage for the Arizona Cardinals right now. I mentioned that at the second half of the game, the Giant fans, they were awoken from their slumber, and they were loud as can be. Matter of fact, in the second half, in the fourth quarter, there were 2 false start penalties, back-to-back false start penalties on the Arizona Cardinals. And why was that? Because of noise. And you should never have to try to go into a week of practice thinking, let's practice our silent count while we're playing at home. And that might be the case for the Cowboys game as well. And that is the saddest state of affairs. And that just tells you how far that they've fallen in the amount of apathy. You've heard me say this before. I've said it to Ed before. Apathy is, you want somebody to love you. You want somebody to hate you as a fan, or even as an artist. I'm an MC. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I want somebody to love me or hate me. But if they're just indifferent about me, then that's what I don't want, because they could care less. They couldn't care less. That's what you don't want. And if your fan base is becoming apathetic, then those people who were once season ticket holders will give up their seats, or if they stay season ticket holders, then they'll maybe try to again cash in based upon who's going to be coming on the home slate, on the home docket, to be able to sell those tickets and make a few dollars, make their money back on their tickets, and then make a profit. And that's what you don't want. So how do you solve that? You solve that by, hopefully, what we're doing now is starting to build the foundation for the next great Cardinals team, the next team that this fan base can get behind. So those you have the rabid fans that are going to be there. They're going to be moaning and complaining the whole time that they're in the building, talking about what once was or what should be, or all those things. So you'll have some of those folks that'll still pay their money but still be there. You want to continue to you want to be able to address everybody, but then you have those ones that are kind of in that middle. They're just waiting to see, because they want to support a winner. People want to support winners. There are some that are because of maybe where they've grown up, and a lot of people are transplants here in Arizona, as we know. So there aren't a whole lot of homegrown Arizona Cardinals fans. There are much more. My two sons are Arizona Cardinals fans. They're homegrown, but as that over time that you'll have that happen, so that you'll love them in the good times and the bad times. But if you are coming from Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, all parts in all other areas, coming here to Arizona for a better lifestyle, then you still have an allegiance to the team that you rooted for before, or wherever you came from. So you want to see the Cardinals win, but it's not live or die with you. So you want to turn this thing around as quickly as possible, so that those people are the ones that are putting their money down for those season tickets, because it's the cool and it's the in thing, it's the hot ticket. And that's not happening yet. Hopefully it does. Stay the course, and maybe by next year, if we're electric, not just electric. Now, you can't be electric on the road and then come home and lay an egg, as has happened in the past over the last few years under the Cliff Kingsbury era. There was a lot of, just the number of home losses. I can't remember how long that the home loss, goodness, because it's been a while since they've won at home, and the number of home wins is very few and far in between. So it's important. It's important. If you don't win, if you don't do nothing else, you better come home and not only put excitement on the board, excitement in the building, excitement on the field, but also to win some of these games, because that will give people the confidence to plug down their money and come to a game. Because the last thing you want to do is spend all that time in traffic just to go to a game in which your heart's going to get broken. It's better to lose 31-28 than to get blown out 40-0. Yet and still, that is what you need to energize the fan base and to try to turn the tide in your favor, so that you can start to have that home advantage again. Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. The word for me is not good, because I've seen, I was listening to the callers into the post game show that said that this team can be good this year. This team can be good, and this is because of what they've shown us the first couple of weeks. The team, most people, whether you are the most the most optimistic person, or even if you are the most pessimistic. Well, if you're pessimistic, you already thought this, but that the Cardinals were not going to win a lot of games. What we have seen is that they have missed on two opportunities to win games. That Washington game, that week 1 game, that was winnable, definitely winnable. Again, conservative call playing. I think that was the reason for that. And week 2, of course, if you're up 20-0, you should win that game. And at one point in time, being up 28-7, you should win that game. But here's the thing: competing, because most people thought that the Arizona Cardinals were only going to win 2, 3, maybe 4 games tops, and it's still looking like that. And if you look at the schedule, it's you can take a look at it. The next few weeks are going to be very challenging, starting with the Dallas Cowboys coming into play the Arizona Cardinals. But they've been competitive, much more competitive than I thought anyway. And I believe than Ed thought as well. But they've been much more competitive. And because of that, that gives you hope. So at least you know that if you tune into a game, maybe not if you go and pay your money and go to the stadium, but if you at least tune into the game, that is going to be competitive. What we're hoping for is that the coaches, the learning curve becomes much shorter for the coaching staff, and that they learn how to close out these games in which they are up, because that is important to building confidence moving forward. Not for this season, but for next season, because the more that you understand how to execute in these high pressure situations, that is what will bode well for you. So I'm not worried about them being good this season. What I'm worried about them is competing. I want to see them compete, and I am seeing them compete. We see some flaws, whether you're getting beat deep or whether you are calling a game, not making adjustments, or you're calling a conservative game at some point because your philosophy maybe needs to be adjusted. Just because the way you are now doesn't mean that's the way you have to be 2 or 3 or 4 weeks from now. And that's where the opportunity will come about. That's where the opportunity will come about. So it's all about competing for me, not necessarily whether or not they're good. And they have been competing, and I've been very, very impressed with what I've seen, some of the physicality. But let's continue. Let's be consistently more aggressive, as opposed to being consistently conservative when it comes to the game plan. Um, Before I head out of here, so who is to blame for this 31-28 loss? A little bit of everybody, right? Because there were some missed tackles. There were, again, I think there were some issues when it came to the adjustments, especially on defense. You give up 31 points and a half. I don't care what you say. If you're the offense and you've been part of putting up 28 points, that should be enough to get you to win. However, if you are also on the offense and you see your defense is not beginning to hold up their end of the bargain this week, especially in the second half, because they acquitted themselves quite well in game one and the first half of game two. But you have to turn that switch and be aggressive so that you can continue to put points on the board, because you see that is what's going to be necessary for you to get out of this building with a win. So there's enough blame to go around, but I put a little bit more on, especially the head coach. So with Jonathan Gannon, I'll give him this loss. And of course, players play the game, so there's always some accountability and some blame to go there. But I put this a little bit more on the head coach here, just because I think that there are things that he could have done, especially coming from a defensive background. That is his pedigree. So with that pedigree coming in, you should be able to make those adjustments to be able to stem the tide, to be able to come out of that, even with just with by the skin of your teeth, to be able to come out of this with a win. So this has been Bleav in the Arizona Cardinals. Again, my name is Javon Adams, and I am standing in for my brother Ed Smith, who will be back on Thursday. When we do this on Thursday, we do this twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays is where we look back on the game that just took place. Again, we're talking about the shameful loss 31-28 to the New York Giants here at State Farm Stadium here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. And so tell a friend. Thursdays we look ahead to the upcoming opponent. So on Thursday we'll be talking ahead. We'll be talking about the matchup with the Dallas Cowboys, as they are going to come, and I would imagine, take over here at State Farm Stadium with their fans that will be in the building in mass. And so, as always, we are presented by Bet Online. And as I always like to say around this time, you can